Good evening, everyone. This is Joe Henches with Beyond the Chart, and this is stock market analysis for today. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2014, and this is BRIC Wednesday. We're going to talk about the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And then we'll move, first we're going to start off with our indices, the Dow, the SPX, NASDAQ, then move into the BRIC countries, then hit the 5 most active of the Chinese stocks that I track on a regular basis. We're going to talk about those today. But starting off with the Dow was down 101 points today. So, we had that very compressed day yesterday, and so now we got this pullback. We haven't broken any trend lines. We didn't break one here on the RSI, and we haven't closed below the 10, which is what I typically like to see, close below the 10 with some follow through to indicate that we might be getting ready to turn. So far, other than pulling back into the diagonal, we're not getting any indication of turning down. Now let's take a look at the S&P 500. Similar, although the S&P 500 never broke out of this diagonal. So it's, and again, it hasn't broken this trend line that I've drawn up here. And the moving averages are still, in sequence, the 10, 21, 55, and of course the 233 is way down below. Now the NASDAQ is one that's really interesting to me. Now you'll notice the things I've got, the numbers I've got on here. This is starting to look like a very symmetrical head and shoulders. Now this right shoulder isn't forming as high as this left shoulder, but I think it's really interesting. I started looking at the symmetry and the fact that we have 3 little peaks and 3 little peaks over here. Now they're not identical, but nothing ever is. But it's interesting how you have this high peak as the first one closest in, coming off the neckline, then a little bit lower, and about the same out in here. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, this could be setting up, and you've got this little trend line here, you had this little trend line here. So the symmetry of this with this looks really intriguing to me. And we'll talk about this when we go to BIDU. BIDU has almost an identical setup that's showing up as a pattern. So that's really intriguing. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the Brazil, the BRIC countries. Start off with Brazil. So Brazil's continued to move out of this pennant that we had in here. It's broke out of that last week, and now what is the last 5 days? Actually, we had a little pullback and then rallied back up, and now we're at a higher point than the previous week. So it's continuing to push to the high side. Moving averages are going straight up. And again, just as a reminder as to where this is, this is in this big sideways move here. Now Russia, the MISEX index. This has rallied pretty strong, which really did kind of surprise me. But now I'm wondering, given this little move in here, is this a petering out, or are we going to get another big upshoot? And the reason I say that is because we had this little flag down here, and now this looks like a little diagonal. Let me blow this up a little bit more. So if you take the trend lines and you look at this and take it again in here like this, it looks like it's trying to form a little bit of a diagonal, and that's following on with the fact that we had this flag down in here. Okay, so now this looks like 1, 2, 3, and this looks like a fourth, but it's really, it may not even be a fourth. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks like an ending diagonal to me, so we'll have to see if that's the way this plays out or not. The other thing to look at is if we take a trend line in here and move it across like this, start to see what we get, make this look a little more in sync with what this is, and let's make it a formation or same color of a, gosh, didn't do it. Okay. So now that's interesting. We'll have to see. So is this a big wedge type of pattern? The real key is, do we start to get some action turning back down out of this? That then indicates you get a break out of this. Now, this upward sloping line is what's got me leaning like this, but we'll have to see whether or not that's what plays out. Okay, Russia, India. India is going right through the moon. It's just going straight up, and this is all of this enthusiasm, especially this week, apparently, because of the elections and the party of Modi, I guess his last name is looking like, when they did the exit polls out of the polling, it looks like his party's going to win and that he's going to win. Now, the results aren't out to the end of this Friday, but everybody seems to be thinking that that's the way it's going to go, and so the stock markets are continuing to rally as a result of that. So that's what's driving that. And again, these are at all-time highs. I mean, India is just, it's taken off. You can just see what it's doing in here. So, okay. Russia, India, China. Last one, Shanghai Composite. All right, this is still in a big, large symmetrical triangle, and we get a little bit of a rally out of China over the last week, but again, no real indication of a breakout one way or the other. It's hanging down here close to this bottom line, so we're just going to have to watch. I'll get the 10 down in here, and the moving averages is kind of rolled over, but that's because they had this big momentum in here. So we'll have to see what happens. Right now, it just looks somewhat indecisive. And then when you just kind of look back as to where this has been, again, this is at the end, it's been in a pretty good downtrend, and it's been doing a lot of chop over the last year or so. These big swings in here, and then now going sideways in here. I mean, you could almost make the case that we even have a bigger type of pattern going on. I mean, you can draw even bigger trend lines in here, or a bigger type of formation. You grab this and you pull it back on out, and now it just looks like an even bigger symmetrical triangle. And symmetrical triangles can be continuous movements where they continue the trend that was underway before you got into the triangle, or symmetrical triangles can be tops or bottoms. So we'll have to wait to see what we get, whether or not we get a breakdown out of this and go down and test this low, or whether we continue to push, break out through this line and through this line, and come back up and start to test this high. So that's the scenario I'd be looking for. All right, now let's move on to the stocks. That's enough for the indices tonight. Melco, Crown Entertainment. Melco's in a pretty strong downtrend. It's still in this channel. There's no change to this. I don't even think that I'm seeing a little bit of divergence coming in here. But again, even with divergence, you don't jump in. When I look at this, I'm looking for the ADX. The ADX is not over 30 yet, but still, we need to have this turn up above and get the moving averages turning to say you want to buy. And I like to look for a move like this up above these downtrending moving averages to then look for a short opportunity like in here or in here, in here. Those are the types of things you want to look for. I'm not seeing any of that right now, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Melco. The next one on my list is YY. And YY is a similar picture to Melco. I mean, a strong trend, but this one, when I look at the ADX, it's 34. I got a reading of 34. So anything over 30 is really, really strong. Anything over 20 is trending. Anything over 25 to 30 is very strong trend. So you got a pretty strong downtrend going on here. Again, no specific play. We've pulled all the way back to the 233-day moving average. You are in this area where you're going to get support because of this consolidation, where there was a lot of trading before. And when you see this kind of thing, you just put a line right through the middle of it, and you can almost define where your support's going to come in. That's where, pretty much where it came in. So Okay, that's YY. The next one is YOKU. YOKU to-do. And another one looking like a pretty strong downtrend. Let me look at the ADX on this. 33 again, over 30. Now the interesting thing about this is it does look to me like we got an ABC flat formation. We call it a flat because the B went all the way back up to the start of A. Okay, if it's a zigzag, B would be stopping down here. It'd be like an A, B, C. But when you have a flat, the B comes back up to the start of A and sometimes goes beyond it in a running flat or expanded flat. So right now I'm looking to see, I kind of thought that this C move may have gone as far as it was going to go when I looked to project the length of A, take it back to the beginning of B. Here's 100%. That's where C would equal A. Here's 161.8%. And so I thought we'd be in that zone where we might be stopping on C, but it didn't stop there. So when you look back for clues, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, and it looked like we had 5 waves. It looked like we had this big sharp pullback and looks like we had the 5 waves up and getting this ABC. So we're just going to have to watch to see. Like I said, we're in a pretty strong downtrend. You don't want to be diving right into this. So we'll have to watch for a turn and or a sharp pullback, like right in here would have been beautiful to short right below these two in here. And let's see, the next one is QIHU 360. There we go. We're getting some divergence in here on DI plus. DI minus, I'm sorry. That was the red is DI minus. And then the RSI too. But again, we've got this case where let's see, the ADX is 34. So again, we're in a strong downtrend. And even though we're getting divergence, you got to be very cautious about jumping in. And you got to be waiting for the turn in here. So the last one we're going to take a look at. Now, let me take a look at this again. It's really tempting. The only thing that's giving me caution, let me blow this up a little bit. Sometimes when they correct back to the fourth wave of the previous move, okay? And that's where we're at. So given that we're at the fourth wave, the bottom of the fourth wave we corrected, and the fact that we're getting divergence coming in, that's what is making me hesitate to talk about, even though we pulled back and traded slightly above the 10 and everything's down sloping, it's making me hesitate to buy a break of, say, the prior 2 days or something like that, the lows. To sell it. To sell the lows of the prior 2 days. So that's what's making me hesitate on that. And so I'm going to pass for that trade idea, but it'll be interesting to watch and see. Now, back to BIDU, or finally ending with BIDU. This looks very similar to the NASDAQ. So, this looks like a complex head and shoulders top. This is what a complex, you got 2 heads in here. You got multiple shoulders on both sides with the neckline. This is almost a classic. Now look at here's the NASDAQ, and then here's BIDU. Okay, so it's going to be real interesting to see if this is what plays out. To make this happen and see this play out, it's going to, the 10's below the 21. We're going to need to get this starting to break down, break this trend line, and of course break this neckline. And then the projected move on this is going to be the distance between, if you take the middle between this height and this height, let's say right about here, and you measure from there down to the neckline, and you do that. What I like to do is use like a business card or something right on my screen and measure it, because we're measuring percentage move. This is semi-log. I'm not measuring actual points. I'm measuring the actual distance on the chart itself. And so when I look at that and I project it, it's going to be down here when you take that same distance. So we'll try to get a more exact projection on that. But anyway, that's it on BIDU. That's it for the 5 Chinese stocks for tonight. and BRIC Wednesday. So share the video, share the post, and we'll be back tomorrow night with a review of what the market action was tomorrow, and then we'll take another look at a different industry sector tomorrow night. I'll have to look to see what we haven't looked at in a while, and then we're trying to rotate through the various industry sectors. So this has been Joe for Beyond the Chart. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll talk to you again. Have a great Thursday.